Hello, everyone's Forest Focus. Pre-season is over for Nottingham Forest. Who are the stars of the summer and who has work to do? We'll discuss that and the latest transfer news as the Reds search for a new winger continues to evolve in the company of a commentator, a podcaster and a Reds fan in the magnificently named Matt Davies-Adams. Good to meet in person, finally. How are you doing?
I'm all right. Yeah, it's kind of like that Spider-Man meme, isn't it?
I've already thought of tweeting that later.
I'm hoping that your dad's going to be all right with this because he got slightly confused, didn't he, when I was on Sky Sports News that it was you. And I've had issues with where I get my turkey for Christmas, then being very disappointed when I turned up as me and not you. So yeah, it's a constant burden for me. I've had messages off Prutz. Hey, we're doing the pod today, and I'm like, what pod? No, wrong, Matt Davis. So yeah, I'm permanently in your shadow, Matt.
I was going to say it probably the other way around, especially as you say, my own father messages me saying, were you on Sky Sports News earlier? I mean, we don't look dissimilar, to be fair, just to add to the name, but, it's a bit discouraging when your dad doesn't recognise you. But yeah, there we go. Right. Good to have you with us, especially as you commentated on all the pre-season games in the company of some former Forest players. So you're well placed to say what you've made of it all. I mean, I suppose the big question is, do you think we're ready for the Premier League on the back of it? What have you made of it overall?
I think it's been so well planned. I think that is massively in Forest's favour, the way that it's done. I think there are a couple of big things that we can really use to our advantage. One of them you touched on yesterday, which is that we had two players away at the Euros and the Copper, and one of those was Matt Turner. And, unless something goes wrong, he's not going to be playing for us next season. And the other one sells, and it's obviously easier for a goalie to come back in, not so many fitness issues or whatever. But I just think the way that it was planned was perfect. Nuno spoke about after Chesterfield how he thinks pre-season is the most important part of his season, and he wanted to get that trip to Spain away for the bonding as well as the matches. And that, with the exception of Millwall, who I'm sure will never play again in pre-season, went as well as it could have done. Really, we haven't had any injuries, and as people might know, I also work for Chelsea, and I compare and contrast Forest pre-season with theirs. They've travelled over 12,000 miles, going coast to coast and back again across America, playing on some atrocious pitches. And I just think that the way Forest have done it has been so much better than that, and must be so much more beneficial to Nuno, his staff, and the players, that really there are no excuses for us not to have a good start, because I think it's been as good a pre-season as we could have hoped for.
Tangent, do you interview all the new signings at Chelsea when they arrive? Because you're going to be a very busy man.
Thankfully, that is not part of my role. No, I'll sometimes do them on match days, but yeah, I haven't got time for that.
No, totally mad, completely. Yeah, off track. One of the things that stood out to me is a couple of things with pre-season, because I don't take any stock in results at all, but fitness and cohesion, just tactically and as a bond as a squad. I mean, that all looks like kind of right where you want it to be, doesn't it?
Yeah, there's a plan, isn't there? You can see how we're going to play. And I was with Paul Anderson for the Olympiacos game last night as we record, and he was saying, look at the pressing out of possession and how willing everybody is to do that in 30-degree heat as it was in Athens. And that is a really good indicator of the fact that the fitness is where it needs to be. And I just think this kind of coherence that we've got about, we've seen a little bit of kind of back three stuff and slightly different tactical tweaks, but by and large, it's been the same formation for most of the games. And I think that clarity of thought is something that we've lacked so much in recent seasons, that it's got to be a huge benefit for us. And also, Nuno starts seasons well. That's what he does in his time in England. He did what, back-to-back seventh place finishes with Wolves. Even Spurs, he got manager of the month for August for Spurs, didn't he? So they must have had a decent pre-season there. So he obviously puts a lot of stock in it. And yeah, I think we're looking really good. But every football fan thinks that a week before the season, really, don't they?
I think they do. I think there are a few clubs looking around that are a bit worried. Clubs fans pop up on your Twitter feed, like Newcastle, like where are the signings and all that kind of stuff. But it feels like we're pretty well placed. People are going to look at individuals and discuss the good and the bad. And I said that we could do that as well. I mean, I've written down a couple of names myself, but if we're talking about players who've had a really good pre-season, there's some obvious ones, but I'm sure you'll name. But who stood out for you?
Yeah, well, I think the obvious one is Sangare, isn't it? And I think we can't really underestimate kind of the human, the mental, emotional impact of what happened to him last year. With the illness, with AFCON, with the fact that he was kind of jeered off the pitch at times. I always think we do underestimate the impact of moving countries on players. And when you then pulled out of it halfway through the season, you can't get fit. I felt so sorry for him, but he looks transformed. So he's the obvious one. Nico Dominguez, I think, has been absolutely superb. I think he's really making a case to be a starter, and whether that's as one of the three behind the striker or alongside Sangare, we'll wait and see. Others, Moreira's the one who's really surprised me. You know, he had one senior appearance as a stoppage time substitute for St. Pauli, and he's come in, he's played the majority of the games in some form or fashion. And I don't think he's pushing to be part of our squad, but I think it's gone from, well, let's give him a season in the B team to let's get him out on loan, and a reasonably high quality, maybe even championship loan for him. So I've been really impressed with him. And I'd also say Chris Wood. You know, you've spent a lot of time on the pod talking about Wood and whether, you know, he's going to be enough to lead the line for us next season because he's getting a bit older, etc. We scored 3 goals in 5 games in pre-season, and goals are goals for strikers, aren't they, whenever they come? So I think maybe we need to be a bit more positive on Wood than we have been, purely on the basis of his age and the fact that he did tail off a little bit toward the end of last season. So yeah, they're the ones I've picked.
A couple of assists as well forward. Yeah, he's looking good. It's just kind of getting through 38 games, and you know, are we going to have those strikes we want? But yeah, definitely, he's won everyone over. The players on my list were very similar. So Sangare was at the top, definitely. I thought Dominguez feels like he goes a bit under the radar, so I wasn't sure if you'd mentioned him, but he was third on my list. So we'll come back to him. The other player was Elliot Anderson, who I feel like has made a really good impression. It feels like I kind of want him to start, but I want Dominguez to start, but I want Danilo to start. That's probably the area of the pitch. I know Anderson could play out wide, but there's so much competition there, isn't there, for those midfield places?
Yeah, and that's a really good thing. You know, you only had to look at Eddie Howe's comments when they sold Elliot Anderson to see that they didn't want to let him go and that he's going to be a useful player for us. And it's not just that he's coming in as a hot prospect. I think he's Premier League ready because he's played nearly 50 games in it, and he's played in the Champions League. So we're getting somebody for the future, but who can be somebody for the present too. And yeah, his set pieces look good, didn't they, against Olympiacos, which is maybe something we've not seen much of. So do often fear a little bit for players who are tagged as versatile because you want to nail down one position, but certainly when you come to a new club, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. So yeah, I've liked the look of him as well. But what's his best position? I'm not sure.
That was literally what I was going to ask you, because I'm not sure either. Is it playing off the left? He can't. It probably is where Morgan plays, but he's not going to play there. Is it as an 8? But then you can't play. Yeah, you can't probably play Danilo. Just going back to Dominguez, why do you think he goes under the radar? Is it because he's one of those players that does so much work off the ball that sometimes you don't notice his positive work on the ball as well?
Yeah, I think you can be damned with faint praise when you like that. Obviously, I watched Conor Gallagher a lot, and people sort of use it as a stick to beat him with, that he works hard off the ball, which I always think is just mad. But Dominguez has got quality to go with that as well. That little setup for, it was Wood's goal against Millwall, wasn't it? It was just beautiful when he laid it back to him. And I think did he have a few injury problems sort of end of last season? He was kind of in and out
Yeah,
of
he
it.
had surgery, didn't he, right at the end of the season? Yeah.
Yeah, but I think I'd have him as one of the two alongside Sangare in the first game. I'm not quite as high on Danilo as everybody else, but yeah, I think he goes under the radar because he's not rapid like Elanga, he's not flicks and tricks like Morgan, but he's a solid 7 out of 10 in every game he plays, and you need a couple of those in your team.
Yeah, I think he might have played his way into that Bournemouth game alongside Sangare. I mean, Sangare's a lock now, isn't he? He's really nailed his place, you would assume, hasn't he?
Yeah, and what he needs is 10, 15 games where he starts every week, where he feels like he's got the faith of the manager, and he can sort of win over the doubters that there are, particularly amongst the home support. But yeah, we paid a lot of money for him. You know, we want to see what we've brought him for. We know that it's in him. And another player, I think the benefit of having a pre-season with Forest will be massive for him, because he was playing against us last year, wasn't he? He came in right at the end of the window. So yeah, he's nailed on for me, and then it's who goes alongside him.
The other player who started the summer really well, he didn't tail off particularly, but you know, didn't quite maintain early impact, is Hudson-Odoi, I thought. I mean, is he completely nailed? Because we can say where Anderson can play out there as well. Again, it's good options, but yeah, I mean, he looks bright, and Elanga again last night as well. There's that real mix of competition now for even the wide places, I guess, with Anderson in the mix as well.
Yeah, definitely. And this thing of like finishers and starters rather than substitutes
Yeah.
these days is obviously a big thing in the Premier League. But yeah, the form that Callum showed at the end of last season gets him a start against Bournemouth for me. He's somebody who have watched probably, I'd say 75% of the games he's ever played, because obviously he came through at Chelsea and he was in the under-18s as a 16-year-old, and I watched a lot of him there. And uh, I'm so desperate for him to have the career that it looked like he was going to have before I was there at Stamford Bridge when he ruptured his Achilles. I'll never forget it. The physios made him walk all the way around the pitch. I was
Oh,
thinking, what are you doing? This is adding months and months to his recovery time. And lo and behold, he was out for ages and hasn't looked the same, but he's definitely getting back there. And I think he's got the end product to go with the pace, which is maybe the thing that Elanga is slightly missing, albeit he scored that brilliant goal against Olympiacos. I think that just gives him the nod. And obviously Jota Silva just getting used to his teammates and the football. So I think he's going to be drip fed in through the early weeks of the season. So yeah, Callum probably one of the first picks, I'd say, certainly in the first few games.
so I didn't really. Obviously, you watch opposition players, but you don't really watch them and take them in. Was he a completely different player at Chelsea? Was his game based much more on pace? Has he evolved it now he's come back from the injury?
Yeah, he's definitely evolved it, and I think it took him a while to kind of get used to his new body, if you like, and the fact that he was never going to have that immediate dynamic straight off the bat pace that he once had. I also think as footballers get older, they do obviously they rely less on their pace, but they become better, more intelligent players, and that doesn't have to be your go-to every time. And I kind of think that's the case with him, albeit he has a go-to, which is to cut inside and shoot. But Ian Robin made a career off that, and he did all right. So.
At the other end of the scale, not players with red flags, but players who maybe have a bit of work to do based on what we've seen. Who are you kind of looking at there?
I mean, as has been mentioned on the pod, so I won't hammer it too much, but Murillo's just looked miles off it, hasn't he? He's given away 2
Mm.
penalties. He was caught out for one of the goals against Olympiacos. There are some players who just don't do pre-season, and I'm hoping that he's one of those. I don't think, from everything that I've heard, that he's had his head turned. I just don't think that's the kind of guy he is. I think he's made peace with the fact that he's at Forest for another year, and that's what's best for him. So yeah, I want to see more from him, definitely. Nico Williams, I think, has been caught out of position quite a bit, and it's interesting that it came, as you discussed about his change of agents and that kind of leak of, oh, maybe West Ham are interested in him. Yeah, you got to kind of back that up with a few performances, and I'm not sure his place is under pressure unless we do get a new right back. Obviously, Ola can play there if needs be, but he's looked like he's got some work to do. Maybe it's a fitness thing, and if I'm being harsh, maybe Morgan as well, other than
Yeah.
Millwall. Like, have we really seen the output from him? I sometimes think he doesn't do himself any favors with all his off the ball work. It's great that he does that, and it is an important part of his game. It shows how committed he is to the team. But I'd rather see him conserve his energy and use it for attacking rather than tracking back and defending. I think he gets a bit too involved in that sometimes.
Yeah, Morgan was the player I was going to mention as well. Not that he's had a bad preseason, but like Sangare's laid the foundations to say, yeah, this guy's going to have a great season. I don't think Morgan's quite done that. I mean, I certainly do think he could and probably will have a really good season for us. But he's been more 6 out of 10 in every game rather than 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10 in any games particularly. Just on Murillo, one of the things we discussed last night was, would you start him in the first game? I 100% would, and I think he'll be fine. But is there any doubt in your mind?
Nope, nailed on starter for me. Him and Milenkovic together. Bolly's the next cab off the rank as far as that's concerned, and I'm sure he'll get plenty of minutes. But yeah, look, Murillo's our player of the season, and he is brilliant. He's just had a bit of a stinking pre-season, but that can happen. I think Milenkovic alongside him, no worries about him going straight in because he's a vastly experienced footballer, and I think those two are a lock to be our first choice partnership for the majority of the season if they're fit.
Yeah, agreed. I think so. I don't think you can go. You can't leave Murillo out because he probably he had one good game against Bournemouth, and everyone's like, "Oh, what were we worried about?" So I can 100% see that happening. Just in general on the manager, just before we come to predicting how things will go. I'm not sure he was surly last year. He didn't, he looked like he had the weight of the world on him a little bit because of the pressure of a relegation battle, a points deduction, and everything. You spoke about how much he values pre-season. He looks pretty chilled out. He looks pretty happy. I know you've spoken to him in pre-season. That's why I was going to ask you. I mean, does he look pretty? Did he detect that he was pretty upbeat and he was optimistic and positive when you spoke to him?
Yeah, I'm not sure upbeat is his default setting, But, I was kind of told by friends of mine who cover Wolves, he's hard work to interview. He doesn't like it. He can be a bit gruff. And I didn't find that after the Villarreal game. In fact, I'd interviewed him after Blackpool, which I did for Match of the Day, and that was way back in January. And when I was introduced to him on Friday, it was, I don't think you've met Matt. And straight away, it was like, yeah, I have. Yeah, nice to see you again. You okay? And that was quite impressive because, I could forgive him for having not done. And he chatted amicably. He did mention about players, which I thought was interesting for an interview which was for the club website rather than for anybody else. He's clearly keen on getting more people in, but there's no reason for him not to be happy because everything's gone as he wanted it. He hasn't had any injuries, which is obviously the big thing. But in terms of the actual planning of pre-season, he should be happy. I think he is. I think he's been backed, and I'm kind of turning around on him a bit, to be honest. I think I was just, it's like getting a stepdad. He's not your real dad, is it? After Steve Cooper, the next guy's never going to be as good. But now that time has passed, I can see what he's bringing to us and how he's changed us a bit. And he's just got that bit more Premier League now, hasn't he? And I think he should be happy. I think he is happy. He'll be even happier if he gets a striker, maybe a goalie and another winger.
Yeah, I was going to say, I know you were a big fan of Cooper, like so many people were. There's always that thing of coming in, like the stepdad analogy, coming into a club where 99% of the fans love the guy. I guess the players do. He carried that crest of a wave. Being the man after the man to an extent is kind of a challenge in itself, isn't it? That he had to take on.
Yeah, David Moyes will tell you all about that. And I think that's one of the reasons why Xabi Alonso didn't fancy the Liverpool job. It's much better to be the man after the man after the man, if you see what I mean, rather than immediately replacing Cooper. But maybe that's not a factor anymore. Maybe it's less of a factor because Cooper's gone to Leicester. I get that from his perspective, but it does sting a little bit. I sort of fancy that he might lose his job fairly quickly there, if I'm totally honest, because I think he's up against it massively. They're going to get a points deduction. It's a total style change from Enzo Maresca, and I think that's a really difficult job for him. There's a game, I think we play them end of October at their place, and I think if he loses that and they've had a bad start, that might be it for him. But yeah, we'll never forget what Steve Cooper did for us. He made a lot of us feel the way about Forest that we haven't for an awful long time. So grateful to him. But yeah, Nuno's the manager now. So let's get behind him. It's not like I thought the football would be really, really turgid under Nuno, and it's not, is it? We scored more goals. We look a bit livelier, definitely more dynamic. So good luck to him.
Yeah, I agree with what you say about Steve Cooper as well. I think you don't turn down a Premier League job. Well, I don't know. Maybe he did turn down Palace. I don't know, but I think it's a bad fit for him. I live in Leicestershire, and a lot of Leicester fans around me were not happy with the appointment, and I think he's already on the back foot from when he starts. So yeah. Anyway, like you say, Nuno's the manager, so let's focus on that. One of the things I've been asking everyone, and we'll ask through next week, everyone who comes on, is prediction for where we'll finish and just general optimism. What bracket or specific place on the table are you eyeing up for us as we sit here now?
12th to 16th, and the higher end of that, I think, is achievable. Obviously, it's kind of difficult to predict when the transfer window is still open. I don't think anybody else is going of significance, but I think because I'm a fool, I'm feeling optimistic. I'm going to say 12th. And another cup run would be good too, wasn't it? Because that first season in the Premier League, the Wolves Cup quarter-final at the City Ground was one of the best games in ages. It'd be nice to just go through a few rounds. Obviously, it's unlikely we're going to win one of them, but I think there's a decent opportunity if we get a decent enough draw, certainly in the League Cup, which is something we've obviously got a long history with in kind of yours and my childhood. I'm sure it'd be nice to see us have a proper run at that as well.
With the squad, with the increased squad depth as well, you kind of feel like get a couple of decent Carabao Cup round draws early on, you could definitely have a good run in that. So yeah, I agree with that. I agree. It was interesting hearing Dan's story on Monday, kind of still saying, 17th it isn't bad, but aim, that bracket, don't get too carried away. It's interesting how we kind of contrast, again, we were referencing this last night, fan optimism versus owner ambition, because the owner's going to be looking probably higher than that, isn't he? He's going to be thinking, well, maybe we can finish 10th, something like that, or maybe even higher, isn't he?
I think he is, but I also would like to think that he's had a dose of reality over the last couple of seasons, which is, it's nice to come in and say our aim is to get in the Europa League in a couple of years, but realistically, it's going to take longer than that. And it is still about not getting relegated first and foremost. But season 3, you would expect to see a bit of progression. You'd expect to see us get a bit more of the ball in games, if nothing else. And yeah, that sort of pack of teams that Dan mentioned, of your Fulhams and Palaces and Brentfords and teams like that, there's no reason why we can't finish above those sides. I think I'm not convinced by Fulham this season, and certainly Brentford look like they've got issues. Maybe a bit different with Palace because Glasner's come in and really hit the ground running. But yeah, there's no reason why we can't be looking at lower mid-table rather than 17th. And it's just not much fun, is it? If you if you're losing every week, I just want a period where we go, I don't know, 5 games unbeaten, pick up a couple of notable wins, and we're not just nervous the whole season and biting our fingernails. That would be nice. Just a bit of mid-table mediocrity would do me.
There's a few teams that are interesting, aren't there? We'll come on to Bournemouth specifically because obviously we play them, but like, how much does Elise going hurt Palace? What's happening with Tony and all that kind of stuff? And Polina at Fulham. There's question marks over every team, I suppose, which is why they're down there. But it'd be interesting to see where we fit into the shake-up. Just before we talk transfers, then, just a word for the Trent navigation and all the build-up for the Bournemouth game. I'm going to hit play on this video, which caught me by surprise yesterday because I chucked it in. I don't know. Let's see if it sounds as loud today. So apologies if the next 14 seconds blast your ears. I need to turn that down a bit, don't I? Need to go in and lower the volume on that. Good video, though. Yeah, Forest v Bournemouth next Saturday. Get down for all the build-up and enjoy a post-match beer if we win, hopefully. But thanks, as ever, to the Trent Navigation for their support. Let's talk some...
Are you going to ask me what my favourite pizza is? I've been prepping this more than anything else for this podcast.
I'm going to have to ask every guest who's any kind of viewer in future then. What's your favourite pizza, Matt?
Right. Well, I think there's a case to be made that pizza is the best food in the world. I think you always have to judge a place on the strength of its margarita because that's your basic. But if we're talking dream toppings, I'll be having a pizza later from the local van which comes to my village because sadly I'm too far away from the nav. And they do a chili chicken chorizo special, which is good. But if I was making my own, I would like some jalapenos, some spicy beef, and some red onion, please.
Nice. We were getting some flack for people just saying margarita. So the last few guests have raised the bar nicely. So yeah, very good. Good stuff. Have you been to Italy out of curiosity and had a proper Italian pizza?
I have, yeah. And I've also been to Pizza Masu in town, which if you're not near enough to Nav to get one of their pizzas, I would highly recommend opposite Pitcher and Piano. That is amazing.
Excellent. I was going to say, because we went to Italy on honeymoon and like the pizza there was like next level, to be fair, in Pisa and I would say Fiorentina, Florence, yeah. So, but the Nav is also a place to go for your top local pizza. Right, back to business. Transfer news. We discussed briefly last night the news that broke around Porto winger Galeno. Have you seen much of him? Am I saying that right?
I have seen absolutely nothing of him. I had a look at his stats before we came on, and I see that he scored against Arsenal in the Champions League last season. So that is the extent of my knowledge on him. I don't think he is a Mendes client actually, but I get why we're shopping in this market of Portuguese or Brazilian players or players who are based in Portugal. But I don't want us to just be like really narrowly focused on that. I think there are other markets that we can kind of tap into, and we need another winger, but we do need another striker. And was it Paul the other day who mentioned Elijah Adebayo? And I can't get that out of my head now. I think he got 10 goals in the Premier League last season for a rubbish team. And I think if you slap down 20 million quid and say, we'll give you another 10 in add-ons if he does this, that, and the other, I think Luton would sell him. And he's a Premier League ready striker. And I think that we ought to try and pinch him if we can. That's more of a priority than another winger for me, because obviously Taiwo's fitness and Wood's age/fitness.
Tell you another Luton player that we haven't discussed. There's quite a few Luton players alike, considering, as you say, they're absolute dross last season. I think they were overrated last season by the end of it. People saying how plucky they were, but they lost every game. Tahith Chong, I think, is probably another interesting one who's worth a look at. I saw a tweet from one of the transfer journos saying that he's available around 10 million and he could play out wide or as another. He's a bit of an Anderson type, so maybe it's a bit too close, but yeah, he would interest me. Going back to Galeno then, Rob Dorset tweeting that Forest are considering an improved offer after the first bid was rejected. Porto want 30 million plus. So just if people didn't hear it last night, he's 26, he's got 1 Brazil cap, scored 16 goals and 12 assists last season in 48 games. Obviously a very good player. The thing that kind of made me wonder is, talking about 30 million quid for a player when we're supposed to be trying to sign Sosa for 10 million. There's such a big disparity there. It makes me wonder, are we ripping up the transfer plan? Is it a negotiating tactic? Because like you say, there's other areas of the team that might be a priority, and we've already got Hudson-Odoi and Elanga who feel like good Premier League wingers.
Yeah, I think if we're going to make a statement signing, and 30 million for Forest is a statement signing, isn't it? That's what Sangare was around that figure. It needs to be somebody who we know is going to hit the ground running and won't need the adaptation of moving from one country to another. It's obviously a big help that our manager's first language is Portuguese, but as I said with Sangare, I don't think you can underestimate the impact that has on players. So I'd rather see that kind of money spent on somebody who's already in English football than somebody who might need 6 months to get used to things.
Yeah, I think so. Well, but like you said, I haven't seen him I've seen nothing of Galeno, to be honest. If he's a superstar and he raises the team, then yeah, go for it. I trust the scouting department this summer, but then I think it's got to affect the budget. So, do you think the Sosa deal gets done? Because I saw there's a couple of tweets saying basically he's not quite gone on strike, but he's not far off going on strike to force it through. And when a player takes that stance, and Forest are pretty, when Forest want a player, I think they'll push the boat out. So do you think it gets done in the end?
It sounds like it probably will, but that's a bit of a red flag to me if he's going on strike to try and force the move through, because what happens if he plays for us for a season, then decides he wants to go and play for Man City and does the same thing? So yeah, I'd be slightly concerned about that. But yeah, it's gone quiet, hasn't it? Which is always a bit of a worry. I hope we just don't end up overpaying for another player who seems fairly similar to what we've already got. And I can't pretend that I've ever seen him play, so it's kind of difficult to have an opinion on what he's going to add to us. But I hope we've got a price in mind, and if it gets too high, then we walk away.
You mentioned striker and winger. We've talked a lot about midfield, which feels set. Central defence feels set. I guess the other area of the pitch that we're kind of looking at are fullbacks and goalkeepers. What are your thoughts specifically on the goalkeeping area? Because Sells wasn't at his best last night, but he's not done anything particularly wrong at all. And he's had some really good games in the Premier League. Do you know where Miguel was last night? Have you heard anything about that?
I do not, no. But he's obviously not going to start against Bournemouth, is he? I think I was kind of on the, well, Sells hasn't done anything wrong, so why should we change it train? But if we can get Aaron Ramsdale, we've got to do that because he's much better. I don't think Sam Johnston is. I don't think there's much difference between him and Sells particularly, but Sells isn't going to cost us a lot of points, but I'm not sure how many he's going to win us either. I think the Miguel signing was a slightly strange one because he's 25, isn't he? So he's not. It's not like we're. I know he's a goalkeeper, so he's probably going to play for longer. But it's not like we're buying a kid and saying we'll stick you on loan or in the reserves for a couple of years and see how you do. So you think he's got designs on playing before too long. But Sells is okay. He's kind of. I know Temp said he was a 7 out of 10. I think he's a 6 out of 10. And if we can upgrade, fine, but let's not bring in somebody comparable just because they're available. And, Sam Johnston, I think, is not that much better. So, yeah, if we get Ramsdale, fantastic. If not, fine to stick with Sells rather than just add another body.
I agree. It's got to be an upgrade. Like, again, going back to Chelsea, they've signed another keeper, and Jorgensen, I think his name is. They're going to sign another one I saw last night. They've got Petrovic, Sanchez, Bettinelli. You'll know better than me. They've got all these keepers. We've been that club, and we don't want to be it again. But yeah, I think I misread the Miguel signing because I thought, oh right, we've unearthed a star here. He's gonna be in the team in like 6 games after the season, and maybe he is. I don't know, but yeah, it remains to be seen because we haven't had a chance to look at him in pre-season. I felt a bit sorry for him. You were commentating on games saying, well, this lad hasn't had a save to make yet, has he?
Yeah, tough for him. I mean, it was just watching him come on and basically not really have to lift his arm to touch the crossbar was quite a thing. But yeah, you want to be able to show what you can do, and I guess what he will hopefully be able to offer that Sells can't is a bit more kind of commanding of his area and maybe a bit better with the ball at his feet as well. But it's such a tough position to play yourself into, isn't it? You're basically relying on the other guy to make a mistake. You can be as good as you like in training, but very few managers are going to make a change in that position based on anything other than injury or the other guy losing form. So you might have to wait a while. And what's he going to think if Ramsdale does come in? I mean, assume that would be the end of Sells maybe, but then how easy is it going to be to shift him? It's a tricky one.
Yeah, it is. It is. Last bit of transfer news I want to discuss before we wrap things up. It isn't Forest, but it's Forest related, I guess, tangentially, is Solanke from Bournemouth to Spurs. Looks like it's going to happen probably before the weekend. I mean, does that change the complexion of that game between us and Bournemouth massively for you when you look at who else they've got up front? There's not a lot there. Does it make you pretty confident that not a win's a must, but it's just a massive opportunity?
With the caveat that it's Bournemouth, and for some reason we just can't seem to beat Bournemouth, which is really annoying. Yes, it is massively. Solanke, I think, is an excellent player. I saw him in the youth team at Chelsea get 41 goals in a season. He was just absolutely brilliant. I think he maybe got a bit of bad advice going to Liverpool, where his career stuttered a bit. It took him a while to get going at Bournemouth, but he's an excellent Premier League striker, and that is a huge blow unless they've got somebody lined up, which they may well do. But I had a look, and it's Enis Unal, who started 2 Premier League games, and Daniel Jefferson, who's a kid they've just brought in from Sheffield United, and that's it. Solanke is absolutely critical player for them, so we ought to be marking that down as a game that we can get 3 points from. But again, it's Bournemouth, and Iraola is one of the most impressive managers in the lower half of the Premier League, isn't there? So I'm sure he was realistic to think this guy might not be around. But similarly, you get to this point, what are we, 7 days before the start of the season? I do think managers will be annoyed if their star players go at this time, particularly if there's not a plan to replace him. But yeah, he likes a goal against Forest. He's a great player. It'll be brilliant if he's gone by the time we play them next week.
Just lastly, then, just thoughts on that game and just probably the first 3 games. It feels like it's one where it's either we're going to hit the ground running, or it's going to go wrong, and we're going to be panicked because we're Forest fans. How are you viewing those first 3 games?
Yeah, this is something I mentioned to Paul Anderson last night, and he was kind of saying sometimes it's easier if you've got a difficult start like we had last year, where all we really needed was that win at Chelsea to say, well, we've probably hit par from these opening few games because we've got the couple of home wins against Sheffield United. And did we draw with Burnley? Anyway, we took some points and then had those difficult away games. But Southampton, I'm guessing, I haven't double checked, but given that they are at home in the second game of the season, I'm guessing that's their first home game back in the Premier League. So that's a big occasion for them. Wolves, is a lot of rancor between us and them, isn't there? Which is nice. You'd think that we might be able to get a win from that. And Brighton, which is the 5th game, I think is an interesting one as well, because I think their manager might take a little bit of time to get his feet under the table there. But in terms of the first 3, we could take 7 points from those games. I think it's the wrong time to play Southampton. I'd rather be playing them midway through the season when they're battling relegation rather than when they're all peppy with Ben Brereton Diaz with a point to prove. So I think that's maybe trickier than it looks. But if we win even one of those first 3 games and don't lose the other 2, I'd say that's an acceptable start.
Southampton's first game, slightly ironically, is Newcastle away, because that was our first game after promotion, and it was a bit of it was an eye opener for me about the level. I suppose Southampton will know it more because they've been here more recently, but yeah, I suspect they lose that one, and then they're looking at that game thinking, we probably don't need to get some against Forest, but we'd be nice, like that West Ham game for us. But it's an interesting dimensions. There's narratives around every game, aren't there? But I'm feeling pretty I'm really looking forward to actually feeling optimistic and upbeat about it all. Right, if people have enjoyed this, as ever, do us a favor and hit like on the video. Do subscribe. You can become a channel member and keep dropping lovely reviews on iTunes. You've given us your time, which I'm really grateful for. Where can people find more of you as we head into the new season?
Well, there is very little that is of relevance to Forest supporters that I do, but I'll plug it anyway. You can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Matt Davies-Adams. I host a podcast on the Football League called What the EFL with Adrian Clark, former Arsenal and Southend winger, and Sam Parkin, ex-Swindon, Ipswich and more. We've got our big season preview episode up if you want to rubberneck on the Football League. There's quite a few people tipping Derby to get relegated, which is nice. So you can enjoy listening to that. I do a podcast on Chelsea called Straight Out of Cobham for The Athletic. If you ever have any reason to listen to that, please do. It's all stuff that's not really that foresty. I'm doing Burton Blackpool in the Carabao Cup for this new Sky Plus thing next week, so be able to watch that as well. Burton quite interesting this season. They've been taken over. Not too far away from us, obviously. But yeah, generally not much Forest related stuff, just general football stuff. I'll be on the Totally Football show Sunday next week, probably with Daniel Story, I would imagine. So we'll crowbar in as much Forest content to that as we possibly can.
Yeah, Totally Football show is the one I was thinking of that, is Forest related. Burton, I like going off on these random tangents. I used to work in Burton for the Burton Mail, so I kind of keep tabs on them with some lads I used to work with. Absolutely mad the amount of players they've signed, but must have a bit of money behind them. An interesting project, so I'll kind of follow them from afar. And I know people sort of connected loosely with Derby. And here they're not feeling prime for a good season, shall we say, internally. So their fans seem a bit restless as well. So I'll keep tabs on that and might raise a smile or two if, as we all will, if it goes as badly as I think it might do, because they kick off tonight, don't they? So
they're the main Sky game, which is mad, really. And
Blackburn,
you'd think that we should be better than laughing at their misery, but I'm 42 and I'm absolutely not. I'm loving it. I know that they're quite a way below us now in terms of stature, and I just think that's fabulous. And the longer it continues, the better, as far as I'm concerned.
Agreed. I'm 42 as well. I feel exactly the same way.
Are we just the same person? Is that it?
I think so. Yeah. Yeah. How many other Matt Davises do you know? It's such a common name. I was in school with another lad called Matt Davis in the same year. I blame my parents for this, really.
Yeah, it's not good. I mean, I added Adams when my son was born in 2018, which is my wife's name, and even that's not really helped. I just need a facelift or something to make me look different to you, and then maybe people will separate us. But even Paul last night, I had to say to him at half time, "Oh yeah, I'm doing Forest Focus. I know you did that." And he was like, "Yeah, I was. Yeah, I know you're not the same guy, but it was kind of confusing." Like, yeah, we are essentially the same person.
God. Oh dear. There you go. Anything you want to say before we depart? I always give any other business. Anything you want to add?
Just let's enjoy this season. I think, we've had the first season was great in the Premier League because we stayed up. Last season was horrible because of all the noise around it. It's been much quieter. Let's pray that it stays that way. I'm in the process of trying to issue a banning order to Mark Clattenburg for a 10-mile radius of the City Ground. We don't ever need to think about him ever again. Just a bit of boring stability would be lovely for this season. And let's hope that we get it. And also, thank you to Forest. I've really enjoyed doing the preseason games with them. It's been great to work with the people that I've worked with. And there's some really nice people who work at the club in the media team, very talented people too. And I appreciate all the help that they've given me. And that helps restore your faith, I think, when you see that there are good people working for the football club that you love. So yeah, very, very, very grateful for that opportunity. It's been good.
Shout out to Julian Bennett. I loved his co-coms. I get on well with Paul Anderson, and I think he's a really good guy. And he was really interesting last night around tactics. But I just love Jules's pure raw enthusiasm.
Yeah. He just absolutely loves Forest so much, which is great. And I was there that day when he scored the goal against Yeovil, so to get to spend some time with him has been an absolute pleasure. And whenever you get somebody who's enthusiastic as we are about Forest, it's just good fun, isn't it?
It is. Right, we shall be back on Monday, all being well, myself and Prutz and another, if I can wrangle someone else in, but that's the plan. And then we'll just build up to Bournemouth through the week. But Matt, great pleasure to have you with us finally. Thank you very much.
Loved it. You're very welcome.
Have a good day, everyone. And if we don't see you on Monday, we shall see you soon.